Hi and welcome to this week's channel. I'm Muzz and I would like to start by thanking V for allowing me to post a private channeling session I did with him just a few days ago. Until now, in the few days that have passed since I posted that, it is the most popular video I've ever posted on this account, which really surprised me. So I've taken that as an indication that you guys enjoy that type of content. So maybe I'm going to find a way to incorporate that into what I do. Last week I posted a survey and 4 very kind people did that survey. I just would like to have maybe like 3 more people. If 3 more people could do that survey, that would be great, because then I'll have, I think, enough information to sort of make a decision going forward. In case you're wondering, the survey is about a product idea I have, and that product idea is how to channel. But before I make the product, I want to know if it's actually a good idea, if it's something that you guys would like to learn. So if you feel inclined to give me some feedback on whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, I really appreciate it, and in some way I will find a way to repay you in the future. So the link for that survey is below this video. Also, this is the book I co-authored with my guides. It's called The 3 Awakenings That Save Humanity. It's a great book. If you enjoy my channeling sessions, you'll really like this book. It's available in the paperback, ebook, and also audiobook. If you'd like a private channeling session with me, that's also something which is possible. Below this video, again, you're going to see a link going to an inquiry form, and the inquiry form just gets a conversation started, doesn't commit you to anything, and then I will send you more information. Then following that, you can make a decision if you want to move forward or not. All right, so today's topic is the divine journey of defragmentation. The divine journey of defragmentation. Greetings and thank you for the statement. The divine journey of defragmentation. We have inspired you to make that statement because this is a journey which is occurring in your own life, and when it is understood, you will be able to live your life more skillfully and expand to a greater degree into mastery. So, let us begin this way. As we have said many times in our channels, your journey will culminate in coalescence back into the One. And this is the same journey for all aspects of the All. The All being the individuations that the One created of itself. Eventually will complete this same journey, coalescing back into the One, meaning that their identity will eventually be consumed by the One in realization that they are in fact the One. And when this has occurred for all aspects of the One, all individuations, the universe, creation, shall no longer be, having all coalesced back into the single identity. Can you see? That is the end of defragmentation. It is the return to One, where there no longer are any fragments. So, this journey began at the moment of creation, when the All was created. This is when the journey of defragmentation first started. The One, prior to creating the All, existed as an intangible concept, which precluded experience, yet it yearned to know itself experientially. So, through the use of the very first singularity, it created a paradox of itself. In the moment of quantum leaping across the original singularity, it transferred from a state of the single intangible concept to the infinitely divided material tangible. This was the first paradox, and it was the first use of singularity, which created the all. At that moment, when the all was created, this was the moment of maximum fragmentation, because there was nothing larger than the consciousness of the single particle. And since that moment, there has been a continual defragmentation of that original state. The very first defragmentation to a level of new beingness was the formation of the galaxies. The galaxies became the very first defragmented states of the all. And then there was the star systems, and then there was the planets, then there was the spiritual groups, then there was the individuals, and so on. And so this is the journey of defragmentation on the way back to the total coalescence of the all back into the one. So, this concept can be applied to your own experience, because as this is the divine journey, going from maximum fragmentation to defragmented to the state of there no longer being fragments, but instead just the one. When you look at your experience, you can see this is an applicable concept. And so, we now shall give you examples of how this can be utilized in your own experience. First, when you live your life, there is a chain of experiences. Yet, the shorter these experiences are, then the more difficult it is to navigate your life. Because typically, when an experience ends, there is a moment of reflection on that experience. What did it mean? How did I do? Was it okay? And there are those who are hyper-focused on fragmenting their experience in this way. And so, instead of, for example, going an entire day, leaving your front door, doing everything that it is you're required to do in that day, and then coming back into your house, opening the door, stepping across the threshold into your domain, and then saying, how did that day go? How did I do? Was it a good day? Instead of living this way, there are many individuals, increasingly, for reasons that we will discuss soon, that cannot go 30 seconds without entering themselves in this state of judging the preceding 30 seconds. And you can see, when this is the modality, this is the methodology with which you living your experiences, then it becomes very stressful and you have a very high tendency to be neurotic because you are judging every moment. You have fragmented your experience into so many experiences that you are drawn out of the moment continuously because there is this perpetual judging of what has just preceded. And judging is a mind state. And when you are in a mind state, you are not in the moment spontaneously as the presence of the higher self. Because the higher self is download real-time streaming into the avatar, what you see in the mirror. And when you are in a state of utter authenticity, then that download stream is being broadcast instantaneously into the moment as your presence. Yet this isn't possible when the mind is active. So, if you are neurotically inclined and you find that you are continuously judging the moment, then the degree to which you do that is proportional to how inauthentic you are being. If you are judging every 30 seconds, then you are being very inauthentic. To increase your authenticity, to be more masterful of your experience, expand the window of your experience. So, in those moments when you are outside of your domain, for example, perhaps it is 10 hours, then allow that to be a window where there is no judging of any preceding moment. Because you have decided it is one experience. Leaving the domain and returning the domain 10 hours later, that is one experience. And so there is no need to judge it, to reflect on it. And this is going to silence the mind. This is going to set you free. Because if you are fragmenting your experience so much that you are neurotically judging every moment, then you are enslaved by your mind. Your mind has usurped your authority and subjugated your higher self aspect into invisible anonymity. So, start expanding your experiences, meaning that when an experience begins, when an experience ends, it is completely arbitrary. There are no set rules about when an experience begins and when an experience ends. It's completely within your control. So if you are judging every 30 seconds, every 3 minutes, then this is because this is what you have defined your experience as. There are no rules about when the experience began or ended. It is just your definitions. So begin defining differently. And this is the beginning of stepping into greater mastery of your experience. And when you can live in this way, you begin to have a richer experience, have more profound understanding taken from the experiences of your life. Let us demonstrate how this is so. If you are fragmenting your experience so much that you are judging every 30 seconds, every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, then this demarcation cuts that moment off from later moments where there is wisdom which has arisen from this earlier experience, which you have compartmentalized, you have fragmented to such a degree that is only 30 seconds long, only 3 minutes long. And this later part, really, of the same experience is containing understanding, which you are not going to be able to absorb and use to expand self, because this separation between them has crippled or hobbled the capacity to learn and expand from experience, is disabled it to a degree. For example, if your loved one was to, for example, your mother, was to have a terminal illness. Now, we apologize in a way to use this as an example. However, it is through this example that you will really be able to grasp the concept. So we will use it. If your mother was to become terminally ill, and then she went through a process of suffering until she finally released herself from the avatar and returned back to the non-physical state. If one was to conclude that experience at the moment of her passing, then it could be said that mother's death was a meaningless tragedy. Why did she have to suffer the way that she did and then die? It was unfair. She was forsaken. It was for nothing. But understanding the principle that every moment is sacred. Every moment is the perfect moment to further expand you into the final realization that you are, in fact, the one. This is the perfection mechanism of the all, a divine truth. Every moment you experience is the perfect moment, calibrated to the greatest degree possible for your further expansion into the final realization that you are, in fact, the one. So, this is the same as saying that contained within every experience is blessing, is expansion, is new understanding, is epiphany. So, as the beginning and the end of an experience is arbitrarily decided by oneself, and also keeping in mind this concept that every moment is perfectly calibrated to grow you, then that means there is a blessing in every experience. Contained within is the gift of epiphany. So, do not conclude your experiences until the blessing is known, until you have picked the fruit, which has grown and ripened through that experience, for the very direct purpose of you further realizing that you are the one. Returning to this example of mother passing. If instead of concluding the experience at the moment of mother's passing and deciding that it was a meaningless tragedy, you may discover that later in your life, you realize how important it is to be demonstratively loving to your children. Because one day you may be gone. And your children will have to experience the grief and loss of you no longer being there. And those moments when you have wished your mother was still alive so that you could speak with her, so that you could hold her, kiss her, hug her, tell her you love her, feel her love. You will realize that it doesn't last forever. And so, I am making the choice to be more demonstrably loving to my children. I want them to know how much I love them, how much I care for them, how important they are to me. Because one day I will be gone. This is the blessing that was taken from mother's passing. This was the gift of your experience. That is the epiphany. Now you have grown, now you have expanded. The blessing has been realized. And you can give thanks to Mother for giving you that precious gift. It is a state of love and gratitude for the blessing. And so no longer is Mother's passing a meaningless tragedy, but instead one of the most beautiful and meaningful gifts you ever received in your life. Because going forward, the relationship with your children will be better, and your relationship with your grandchildren will be better, and your children's relationship with their children will be better. It is because you have defragmented your experience that this revelation is possible. Start becoming more mindful about when you begin and end an experience by definition, because it is arbitrarily decided. If you have something occurring in your life which gives you great dissatisfaction, then change your definitions about when the experience concludes. And thereby, you will change your definition about what it means. Because unavoidable in creation, in your experience, is that there is something contained within the experience which will grow you, which will become epiphany. So all you need to do, because it is there by default, is wait until you have picked the fruit and you have been blessed by the understanding, and then end the experience, if you wish, with the definition which is positive, which is wise. So, this principle can also be used to accomplish more in your life. This principle of defragmenting your experience. And let us explain how this is so. There are things which perhaps you desire in your life, and yet they require you to go through an arduous, lengthy process to get there. For example, you would like to have a much healthier and fitter body, so you can see yourself in the mirror and hear the compliments from your friends and feel confident when you're in your swimwear. Yet, that experience of being in a state of physicality which makes you proud and is very agreeable and feels wonderful is preceded by an experience which you don't want. And the experience you don't want is the experience of exercising, of eating differently, of being disciplined, of consuming less of the treats that you enjoy to consume. So, you cannot get to the experience you desire because it is blocked by this preceding experience which you do not desire. However, the way to surmount this is to coalesce them into the same experience. So now it is the single experience with different attributes depending on where in the experience you are. So, when you start living differently, exercising, you can say, I'm in the experience of having an amazing body. I'm already in that experience. I have an amazing condition of health. This is the experience that I'm in. Yet I am just at the earlier stages of that experience. So now you are in the experience you desire because you have coalesced them into the same definition. So no longer will you be roadblocked by experiences you don't want from the experiences that you desire because they have been coalesced into the same experience. Another example. You wish to have a profession, have a skill. This is what you desire. But preceding that is the experience of the education, of the training, of the developing of your expertise. You don't want that experience, and now it's roadblocking you to this later experience, which you desire. So for many people, they will never make it to the later experience as they have defined it, because they'll never be able to surmount this undesired experience. And so achievement is never accomplished. However, if living more masterfully using this concept of defragmenting your experience, then you coalesce the experiential fragments into the same experience. And now it is the same experience. And so when you are doing your study, you can say, I am experiencing being the expert. But I am just at the early stages of that experience. And so using this concept, now it becomes much easier to accomplish your desires because all you need to do is stay in the experience. If you stay in the experience, then you will very naturally transition from the early stages of the experience to the later stages of the experience. So it becomes much simpler, much easier to motivate oneself because you are already in the experience you desire, but just at an earlier perspective of that experience. And if you stay within, then your perspective will continually change until you are at the perspective you desire of that single experience. So, let us conclude in this way. The defragmentation of the all is a quality of the light. So as there is a continual polarization, movement towards the light, then increasingly there will be greater coalescence of the many parts into the one. And just as it was for the life forms. So originally there were the atoms, just the single particles, and these coalesced, came together to form larger and larger organisms. And then when biological life emerged, biological life again followed this same pattern, because this is the fractal nature of the one. And the very first biological life were single cell organisms. And then there were multi-cell organisms. Then there were organisms with many millions, then trillions, and so on, of these individual units of life. This defragmentation of the biological, forming greater and greater and greater beings, comprised of many particles coalesced into the same organism. This is the way of the light. This is the way of the one. This is the pathway back to the end of the journey of full coalescence of the all back into the one, the single identity. Those that have chosen the philosophical pathway of darkness, they are diametrically opposed to the light. They are the inverse of the tendencies of the light. And so, predictably, they are focused on fragmentation rather than defragmentation. They work studiously through the pillars of influence which they control to fragment the world, to fragment nations, to fragment communities, to fragment families, and even to fragment your own mind. So, in this environment, it is serving to oneself to be conscious of the fact that the narrative, that the media landscape, that the judiciary, that education, that all of these cultural pillars, which have been usurped to a degree by this unified malevolence, that have taken dominion over your planet and its population to a great degree, have as a central tenet or essential MO of their strategy to maintain the highest degree of fragmentation that they can. And so even when they use a community motif, such as socialism or communism, those within the motif, the individuals, have been very fragmented in their own mentality, in their own emotionality. And although it appears to be the formation of a collective, it is instead a pseudo-collective which is comprised of very fragmented individuals. Because the greater the fragmentation, then the weaker the bonds between each aspect. And this weak bond between aspects means it can be easily pushed in a certain direction, easily broken apart, easily reformed into a different shape when the moment is required, when it is convenient. So, when you find yourself thinking in a way which is not unifying, which sees others external to yourself as an enemy of some kind, as an adversary, realize that this is not the natural tendency of humanity, because it is not the natural tendency of the one. The one is unity, and shall return eventually to the one, the unit, the single. You have arisen from the one. You are a being of the light, comprised entirely of the light, forged from the light. And so unity is your natural propensity. This is what you will expand into once the threshold of ascension has been crossed, quantum leaping the singularity into the fourth density state. You will exist in the unity of the humanity being, identifying both as the individual and the group being. This is the expanding definition of self, which we channeled on prior. So, when you find yourself thinking in some way which is a fragmentation of the one, then realize this is artifact of how your society has been manipulated. The confusion which has been deliberate, such that the chaos, the cabal of darkness, those unified around the philosophical path of darkness who have dominion over your planet, use strategically to create the chaos which keeps the bonds between each other weak, such that they can rule from their position of elite minority over the many masses, which are in a state of fragmentation to the greatest degree to which they can manufacture. Even those who are ideologically opposed to you are ultimately arisen from the one, are forged from the light. Even if there is some confusion, there is belief in non-truths, in a synthetic conceptualization of what life is. And as such, they treat you or behave in a way which is adversarial or is grotesque or is threatening to oneself. They are nonetheless part of this ultimate unity. And so, while it may be prudent to keep a distance between them, you can, however, include them into your non-physical energetic field. You can form the unity with them at the higher aspect, where they are fully aware, the puppet or the avatar representative of themselves living this current life cycle is in a state of unconscious confusion. And the higher self is forged from the light, fully aware that is so. And so from this higher aspect, they willingly form the unity with you. So, the fragmentation can be overcome. And as more and more of the human field begin to think in this way, such that their focus is about unity, unifying first energetically, and then, as this will be a salve of a type and will bring some coherency to the human field, then this unity within the physical experience will begin to take more and more of a leading aspect as a characteristic of humanity. It is already beginning to occur. You could see, prior to the COVID pandemic, large groups of humans were protesting around the world for different reasons, for economic reasons, for governmental reasons, for food and water resource reasons, for many different reasons. But the phenomenon which was centrally thematic to this occurring on a global basis was the coming together to form the unity, the defragmentation of society into a single unified force. And this phenomenon, which is inevitable, is terrifying to those that have used defragmentation, that have used fragmentation as a core tenet of their strength. To see the fragmented society defragment into a single growing organism is very concerning to them. And so COVID was strategically used to fragment your society to the maximum degree yet again. Think about it. When the hysteria of COVID was at its peak, your societies became so fragmented that you could not even trust other members of your family, because perhaps they were carrying a lethal pathogen. And so you could not even be in the same room as them. You could not touch them. You could not express any type of physical demonstration of love with them, because you were potentially a threat to them. They were potentially a threat to you. This was very deliberate fragmentation of your society to weaken you, to undo this natural momentum of coming together, of defragmentation. So, let defragmentation become a theme of your life. So it is not just to defragment your societies, but defragment oneself, defragment one's experiences, defragment one's definitions. Simplify your life, because this is the journey from chaos to simplicity. And pulsating in the energy field of your entire solar system, and particularly your Earth, which is forming into the gem, is the energetic ripple of coalescence, of unity, of coming together to form the single love, which will elevate you and all those that consciously choose to be a part of it above the threshold, such that when the Ascension event occurs, all of you together will transition, quantum leap, the singularity of Ascension, emerge from the birth canal of Ascension into the fourth density, coalesced into the single being, the unity of the humanity being. Begin that journey now. Coalesce those experiences into the single experience. Your experience of being part of the new human paradigm as an ascended fourth density being has already begun. You are in the early stages of that experience. It is the one experience. So, stay in the experience. And the way to stay in the experience is to do what is conducive to staying in the experience. And for this particular journey, it is simply to polarize to the light. Never stop. Continuously become a being of greater virtue, of more love, of greater acceptance and unity. Energetically at first, and then tangibly later as these later stages of this single experience begin to come into your perspective. So, if you have not already, then begin the experience of your ascension today. And if you can stay in the experience, then you will be part of the new human paradigm. And this is why you have chosen to be here at this time. And it can be done with ease when you begin living your life with new understanding. Thank you, and we love you.